Welcome back, Year 5. Today's math lesson is the last one for this unit. In fact, we're doing the end of unit check. So today we'll review what we've learned about angles, and you'll have the opportunity to independently show what you have learned. A lot like the last end of unit check you did, I want you to do this one completely independently. I'll start by modeling some examples for you from the textbook, and then you're going to do the end of unit check from the workbook. Let's get started. This is the end of unit check from the textbook, which you do not have a copy of, so I want you to follow along with me on the screen. In the notebook that you have, you can go ahead and number the page 1 through to 6. As I ask each question, I'm going to give you some time. You'll pause the video and you'll write down what your answer is after you've worked it out yourself, and then when you resume the video, I'll explain how you should have gotten the answer to the question. Let's start with number 1. Which shows a 180-degree turn? A, B, C, or D? Pause the video and decide. You should have selected C. Image A shows a 90-degree turn, B shows a 270-degree turn, and D shows a 360-degree turn. A 180-degree turn, as you see at C, is a half turn. Let's move now on to number 2. What angle does this show? Well, you can't really put your protractor to the screen, so what I'm going to do is put my protractor up there in a moment. First, I want you to cross out 2 answers that you know cannot be right. Which ones did you select? Well, the most obviously wrong angle was C, 120 degrees, because that is an obtuse measurement, and this angle is clearly acute. Now, to figure out the other angle that couldn't be right, you have to think a bit about the angles we've been working with recently. And you would have realized that 30 degrees seems kind of small for this angle. And it really is, because when you look at this, you can tell it's more than halfway to 90 degrees, and 30 degrees is less than halfway. So we could also cross off D. Now I'm going to put my protractor up and give you a moment to see if you can tell what measurement this is. I know it's going to be a little tricky to see. The angle is A, 60 degrees. Remember, even though we also see 120 above the line that we're measuring, the angle that we're measuring, that cannot be correct. That's if we were using the other scale on the protractor, measuring from the other direction. So it couldn't be 120 degrees because that would be obtuse. Now let's move on to number 3. It says, explain the mistake. So take a look at how this protractor has been placed on this angle, and you need to choose from these 4 options which one is the mistake that the person has made. Alright, I'm going to start by crossing out some answers that I know can't be the mistake. I'm actually going to start at the bottom. D is not what we're looking for. It is not the mistake that was made. It says the baseline is not lined up with one line of the angle. But when I look, I can clearly see that the baseline is lined up. I can also cross out C. It says the angle is obtuse, so the protractor is not big enough. Well, that's wrong for a couple reasons. This angle is not obtuse, it's acute. And on top of that, a protractor can measure an obtuse angle. It can't measure a reflex angle. Alright, so that leaves us with A or B. Which of those is the mistake? The answer is B. The center is not lined up with the turn. When we look closely, we can see that the point of the angle is not lined up with the center of the protractor. Now let's move on to number 4 on the next page. It says, which missing angle is not 50 degrees? This is where it's important to read questions carefully, because if you didn't notice the not, you might have circled the very first one. So take a look and figure out which of those is not 50 degrees for the missing angle. Alright, so how would you go about working this out? Well, in all of these diagrams that we see, the angles are on straight lines. That means those angles on those straight lines should add up to 180 degrees. So we can figure out the missing angles by subtracting the angles we know from 180. So if we look at A, we see 130 plus blank. Well, if we add 50, we'd get to 180, so it can't be A. For B, we see 75 plus 55. That makes 130. So that means the missing angle would be 50 to add it up to 180. For C, we see 50 degrees and 80 degrees. Again, that adds up to 130, which means the missing angle is 50. That leaves us with D. We have a 40-degree angle and then the blank. Well, that blank is 140, so that they total 180 altogether. Another big clue here was that for D, the missing angle was obtuse, so it couldn't be 50 degrees. So even without calculating, you could have used your logic and reasoned that that missing angle can't be 50 anyway. Now for number 5. Each angle is equal. What is the angle? How do we work this out? Well, they told us that all the parts are equal. So if we want to find out what they're worth, we can just divide the whole by how many parts there are. And how many parts are there? 8. How much is the whole worth? Well, it's a full circle or a full turn. How much does that measure? 360 degrees. So if we take 360 degrees and divide it into 8 parts, we'll find our answer. Go ahead and solve that division problem now. All right, when you worked it out, you should have found that the answer is 45. Why? Well, 8 cannot go into 3 from 360, so we put down our 0. So then you have to see, can 8 go into 36? And it can. It goes in 4 times, but with a remainder. So you carry that 4 over to our 0 in the ones place, making it 40. How many times can 8 go into 40? 5 times. So we put a 5 up top, giving us our answer on top of 45. So each of those little angles is worth 45 degrees. You could double check that by adding up 45 8 times to see if it gives you the correct answer. Something else I want to point out is that some of those answers that they gave us, those choices, couldn't be correct. For example, D, the missing angle could not be 360 degrees because the full circle is worth 360, so how could each little turn be 360? Also, it couldn't be 90 because we know 90 degrees is a quarter turn, so there's only 4 of those in a 360 degree turn. So it couldn't be that because we see 8 sections there. So once we narrowed it down, the answer would have had to be either A, 45, or B, 30. And when we worked it out, we saw that the correct answer is, of course, A. Finally, let's take a look at question 6. What is the angle labeled Y? Explain your reasons. So you have to pay attention to both parts of this. You need to work out what the missing angle is, but you also need to be able to tell why. And notice that they said your reasons, plural. That means they expect more than one reason. Take a look at Y. Do you notice anything about where it's placed? It's on a straight line, and on the opposite side of it is the angle 113. So that means 113 plus Y should add up to 180. Use that information to work out what Y is, and I want you to explain in a sentence or two how you worked it out and how you know that Y is worth what you determined. All right, here's an example answer that you could have written. All of us should have gotten the same measurement for Y, of course. The angle labeled Y is 67 degrees. Everyone should have gotten that part. Now here's the explanation. I know because it is on a straight line with another angle that measures 113 degrees. So I can find Y by doing 180 minus 113 because a straight line measures 180 degrees. So in those two sentences, I've explained how I was able to come to the conclusion that Y is worth 67 degrees. And that is the end of unit check from the textbook. You will be doing the end of unit check from the workbook for your independent work. But I want you to think to yourself, how did you do on the one that we did together just now? Were you getting a lot of them correct? Were there some things that you realize you need to go back and work on a little bit? Well, if you feel that you want to practice something some more, I encourage you to go back to that part of the workbook, look at that specific topic. Maybe it's supplementary angles, or maybe it's using a protractor. Practice it a little bit more before you do the end of unit check in your workbook, because I want you to do the end of unit check in the workbook on your own. You're not supposed to get any help from it. No help from a parent or a sibling or an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent. Try and do it completely on your own, because I want to be able to grade that accurately. Let's take a look at that end of unit check now. Here it is. It's found on page 75 and 76 of the workbook. Notice it's not very long. However, it will require you to think and reason about the angles that are shown, and to think about all the things that we've learned so far in this unit. So you're going to be applying several skills to these 2 pages. This page that I'm showing you now, page 77, is the power puzzle. It is not required. I'm not counting it so much as a part of the end of unit check, because it is a lot more challenging. Take a look at it, see if you can manage it on your own, and if you can, please complete it and email me a picture, because this would count as extra credit for you. It would show me that you really have grasped this topic very well. However, if you find it too challenging, it is okay if you skip that page. I do want you to do page 75 and 76 though. All right, Year 5, that's all for now. Stay safe and I'll see you soon.